right. Hey, welcome to this panel talk on filmmaking in Greenland. My name is Inuk Jørgensen, and I have the honor of being part of this conversation between myself and Aká Hansen and Paninnguaq Lind Jensen, who will in just a second introduce themselves. First of all, thank you so much for showing interest in this talk. I mean, it's a big thing for us in Greenland to be able to not just show our films, but to be able to hopefully make the world a little wiser on filmmaking and culture in Greenland. So thank you for showing interest. And thank you to Aká and Paninnguaq for participating in this. I am very honored, actually, to have you here. So Paninnguaq, could you say a few lines about yourself and who you are?
Yeah. My name is Paninnguaq Lind Jensen. I come from Narsaq. White Paper is my first film. I think the issues around the mining project is what drive me to make this film, because it's about my hometown and it's about my own people, and I also think that is what makes my film unique. Telling and by help from people in my hometown, we made this film together, and I think that is really important for film and indigenous filmmaking, that it's a first-hand story.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we have films that deal with the similar project, you and me, and I really admire your approach to the whole mining thing in southern Greenland. And I'm glad you brought up the idea of identity, because you, Aká, I know you have a film in the program this year which deals a lot about identity. Could you introduce yourself and maybe your film a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I am Aká Hansen, and I have been working in the Greenlandic film business for 12 years. I actually started in the TV business, and but I have been working with a lot of different projects, both feature-length films and lately mostly short films, but also TV shows during those 12 years. And Half and Half is actually an older project of mine, but it's a very personal film, talking about identity, definitely. From my own perspective, it's about being, a mixed person. For my case, I'm half Danish and half Greenlandic. And so I had a lot of questions about, actually this film is very much questioning myself and the world as from where I see it, being in between Denmark and Greenland. And the project was made in 2014 when I was asked to be a part of a symposium talking about reconciliation between Greenland and Denmark. So my first reaction to that, I don't know what to say. it was kind of like I didn't think about it before, but I then had time to actually think about what did I think about this reconciliation between those countries. And so my journey from there has been very much about finding or talking, trying to protect our own voices from Greenland and what is our own identity, whereas before we were very much used to being portrayed from outsiders. So that's kind of kickstarted my journey towards this, and I've been very active in this area for the last at least seven years.
Right. Very interesting. I can definitely relate to this idea of identity in my own filmmaking, and I'm sure you can as well, Paninnguaq. As you said, your film deals a lot with the place that about Narsaq, the place you grew up in, and I think that's one thing that maybe characterizes us as Greenlandic filmmakers, as indigenous peoples, right? That we go back to our roots when we tell our stories. We use our history, our culture, our country to tell our stories. So very interesting. But how about you, Paninnguaq? In your search for making white paper, how much of you is in that? I mean, how much of you as a person, as a creative Inuk or creative Greenlander, how much of you is in that? I mean, how much identity can you?
It's even though I don't, I'm not really seen in the documentary, it surely reflects who I am too, because it comes from, as you said, it's my roots, it's where I grew up, it's the water I have been swimming in for the past 2-3 decades. So, and this the area from South Greenland is the culture that has shaped me up as a person, and the values I have in the documentary surely reflects our values as Inuit, and how we should take care of our nature and our surrounding for us to pass down to the next generations. So I think, yeah, I think even though it might not be, what do I call it, clear at first, but it says a lot about who I am as a person.
Definitely, I agree, and I, as I said, I really admire your approach to the film. I mean, you and David, you made a wonderful film. You really did, and what I think is quite, because they differ quite in length. I mean, your film is 38 minutes, 40 minutes or something, Paninnguaq?
We have a 35 and 48 version, and the 48 version is what resonates more with what I wanted to say with the documentary, and the shorter version is more artistic. But white paper is more, for me, it is to create a platform for people in my hometown to be heard. And so I wanted to have, to be longer, to include more of what they wanted to say. So, yeah. What was the question again?
No, I think you answered it. I asked about the length of your project. And you, okay, your short film is, out of the three of us who have a film in the program, yours is the shortest. How was it to make such a short film and still have so much baggage that you brought into it? I mean, the whole idea about the identity and you being a mixed race, part Danish, part Greenlandic. How was it to work with that in such a short format?
Well, first of all, this was the first time I was ever in front of the camera for ever. So that was in itself very, like, how do you say it, like pushing my own boundaries. But also what I wanted to talk about was also very personal. Like, I even say where I'm born and talk about, like, what about language? How much is that, like, determine? Well, how much does that determine who you are if you think the language you think in, is that a question about what determines you as a, like, if you're mixed race? So it was very personal in that sense. And for me to be able to, I mean, I also work with Ulenna, who is a very amazing filmmaker. It mostly does, the technical stuff. But I think the collaboration between my very certain, like, very unspecific what do you say, like what I wanted to tell, and his technical approach was what made this film. And I think we got around it very well, because I was thinking about doing it like answering the questions, but then when in the process I actually came up with this idea where I was just going to post a lot of questions that would make the viewer reflect and put their own perspectives in it. So actually the film, I think, doesn't give any answers. It basically talks about some questions that I have been thinking about from my own perspective.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, interesting points that you both make there, and I can definitely relate to because I myself, I work in short films as well, and I really like the fact that you can ask so many questions and leave them open in a different way when you're working short in the short format, and I think that's interesting.
But it's also a very interesting tool to have only 3 minutes, because you have to think very statistically about what do you want to put in. If it's only mine is only 3 minutes, so it's you kind of have to be aware of every shot that's in it, every question that's posed, or everything. Whereas if you expand or have if you, let's say you have a TV program, or as I have made a few of, you can dwell on things and you can expand and explain much more, and even tell more what you want to show the viewer. So it's a great tool, I think, in terms of filmmaking.
But I think I really agree with Aká, because short films really challenge your storytelling, and it can be a really good and artistic challenge, and I think it was really well done and half and half.
Yeah, and I think also the format that you use, Inuk, is also a lot of information, very quick editing, and the pace is so different. As in, if you were to make it, let's say the Tugtupite story would be longer, then you could put in more information, have a different pace, and that. So it's kind of more as a tool of telling a story that is an interesting format, I think.
When I set out to do In the Shadow of the Tugtupite, it was one of the things I really wanted to do was to maybe leave an open wound of a question and just leave it there and hopefully go away. And that's also why I'm so happy that you and David Paninnguaq, that you made white paper, because white paper, because our films deal with the same issue, the same problem of mining, basically. I think it's a great compliment, and I think all the three of our films, and the way I see it, all films from Greenland, they deal a lot with identity, and and they bring back. They look back in time and try to use our culture as Inuit people in their storytelling method. Really, yeah.
I also think there's a lot going on around the mining project, and there's a lot of media here in Greenland about what is going on in South Greenland. In my case, I also decided to make it now because I think it's important to have an inside voice in all of this. So it's not only a story about a little town in South Greenland by some television from Sweden or Germany or other countries. So I think that it's also important that the small people get to talk.
And definitely important to have the voices of the city or the land or Nuna, where we come from, to be heard in these like big issues, as whereas mining is very interesting.
I totally agree. And funny story, funny you say that this was almost like a calling to you. I remember when I made In the Shadow of the Tugtupite, right? I was sitting in my parents who live in southern Greenland, right? And I was doing another film project, and my uncle who lives in Narsaq at the moment, right? The town where this mining is supposed to happen, right? And he came in and he was so upset, like really angry, because I mean there were rumors going around that the public hearings would start in 2021. I mean, no, sorry, in 2020, right? And he was so angry, and because I was there, he says someone should make a film about this, right? Being my angry uncle, right? And I was like, oh shit, yeah, you're right? Because we need to tell this story. I mean, not just for us as a people like Greenlanders, but I think this is in many ways just a mirror of what I see happening all around the world to indigenous peoples, right? We have these huge international companies that bring in tons of money. I mean, millions of money, and almost run over us as indigenous people. So, yeah.
Not just almost. No, I recognize what you say, what you're talking about, Inuk, with this calling, because I had a different issue or topic, but with Half and Half, I also had this feeling about, it was like this story was in my body before it was on the film, and even before I talked about it, it was already bubbling inside of me in a way that that's some films do that for me, or some projects that I want to make do that. And so this issue about Half and Half was something that I always kind of felt I had to share, or it had to get out of my body and become a film. And I think we all three probably share this feeling. So I think also maybe sometimes when I went to film school in Denmark, and sometimes people would research and trying to find, maybe I can talk about this little boy who gets stuck with, like, trying to come up with, ideas for a pitch or ideas for a film they want to make. Like, as these films, they're more coming from in here and not from outside. And so I think that's kind of also something that I can recognize from other indigenous filmmakers, that these issues or these films, we don't go out into the world and try to find out, oh, can I talk about, like, I would feel weird to go to, I don't know, Haiti and make a film there. Why would I? I live in Greenland. I want to make a film there because first of all, it's so few films from Greenland. Second of all, it's like, that's what's like, I feel like it's needed also for our communities, but also because, I don't know, it's inside our body. And I think also because we have such a long tradition of storytelling, like orally storytelling. So it kind of film kind of feels like an extension of, and it's a good, like it feels natural to use film as a story tool today. Don't you agree?
Yeah, you perfectly describe how I feel about it. And I felt the same way with, like, this story was in here with me with white paper too. I had to tell it. I had to make this one. And I also think that's why it's so important that Greenlandic filmmakers and indigenous filmmakers here in Greenland tell as many stories as possible, because in Greenlandic filmmakers' film that it resonates with me, that I can recognize myself in their stories, and I think that is what we need. That is what is important, because we have always heard our stories through white people's eyes, and where we don't feel that it's a reflection of who we are as Inuit. So I think it's so important that our storytelling comes out through filmmaking.
Yeah, sometimes it feels
for it.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it feels like when you watch something from an outsider's perspective, it feels like it's so close, like if I squeeze my eyes, I can see what you're telling, but it's just not like recognizable completely. It's close enough.
Yeah, interesting. You should bring it up because I know you, Aká. I know you have some experience in co-productions with foreigners. I mean, from people outside of Greenland. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yes, I have experience, but it's not like I am. I can talk about this. I will try to be, nice about it. But what I experienced a lot in the beginning, because at some point I moved in 2014, I moved to Denmark. And along with that came a lot of mostly Danish people coming to me like, I have an idea for a film in Greenland. And I often felt like in the beginning, I was very happy to be a part of a project that's finally got money and finally ambitious and finally I can be a part of this. But actually, every one of those projects I had to quit at some point because I didn't feel like it was a story about my people. It was a story about my people, but not from my own perspective. It was close. Again, it was like, it felt provoked, or like it was an imitation of my story. As I can come to it. But I have become really good at sensing when I feel is this an imitation or is this a collaboration? Because there is a difference, I would say. I have worked with also very nice people. I have one project that's called Suite, which was shot. It's a documentary about climate change, but from the Nuna, from the land's perspective. It was a co-production with some Dutch filmmakers, a Dutch director called Jasper Kops, and it was a really good experience for me because I could say, no, this doesn't really feel right, or I think this, and my voice would be respected, and also there was a curiosity, whereas some projects I have worked on before, it was more closed, or it was more like I couldn't be a part of the creative process, as I didn't feel like they listened to me, basically. And I think that's very important. And I'm very sensitive when I'm choosing co-production work now. And I think, because of course people will come and make films in Greenland. We can't close the borders as to like nobody can enter and make films there. That would not benefit. We would not benefit from it. And I mean, let's face it, the money is outside of Greenland for filmmaking anyways. So I have this, I have to be very, like, for me, it's very much about choosing the right people to collaborate with. And so also if people are coming to Greenland to collaborate or be super respectful about the people who are there. And also I think when we are collaborating, we can help, we will benefit from it as into both learning about filmmaking or having our voices heard, but also like we can help the narrative become closer to what we live in.
Yeah. You bring up a lot of interesting points here, because because I was going to ask you, both of you, how you got funding for your films, right? Because I know this is a huge issue for me, right? Because it's very difficult to get financing for films. I mean, Greenlandic films made by a Greenlander in Greenland. I mean, there's basically not a lot of money, right? We do have a few cultural grants in Greenland that we can apply for, but I mean, it's very limited, and we have to share them with all the other art forms, right? And because we're so few people up there, so I completely agree with this is a huge issue, basically, that while we want to tell our own stories, or at least have a say when people want to tell stories about Greenland and about Greenlanders, we have way too few options in getting funding for our projects. I mean, I run into this every time. I mean, and I know all my, how do you say, all my Scandinavian Western friends in the film business, they also have to apply for a lot of money, right? But us, because we don't have a film institute, right? We don't have a film commissioner. We don't have a film fund in Greenland, right? We don't have all these things, and
we also don't have, and so we can't, like, even if we make our films, nobody's catching it a part of the, you know, the ecosystem of filmmaking.
Yeah, exactly. And because we're a part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but we're not Danish in that sense, so we can't even get money from the Danish Film Institute. And this is a very...
That's very interesting, because right now I'm at the RIF at the Reykjavik International Film Festival, and last night we had dinner together with filmmakers from all around the world, like India, US, Holland, the Netherlands, and so on and so on. So people are like, so how is it to make films in Greenland? And I'm like, it's difficult. And they're like, but Denmark, you're a part of Denmark. You can have money there. And I had to explain like 10 times last night, well, we are a part of the Danish kingdom, but, you know, the problem is we took home culture. Of course, you would take back culture as soon as you get to when you're a colony, but we are not allowed to apply for money in Denmark, and they're all like losing their like
jaw.
What is it called? Yeah, jaw, and like, what? Are you serious? Do something about this, because I mean, it's not fair. But reality is that right now we can't apply for money in Denmark, and that's you know, I think it's a system problem. It's a problem of systems, because we should be able to. It's not fair. We're not allowed. Denmark has a really strong film market and a film industry and a big system around film, and they have put in a lot of money there. And to just exclude Greenland and Faroe Islands is so unfair from Denmark. And at the same time, we have like all these systems that we are part of the Nordic countries, and all the Nordic countries, if you want to apply there, you have to be at least 2 countries. But if it's Greenland or Faroe Islands, you have to be 3 countries. So it's even a bigger step, like a bigger stop class, or like a bigger, like an extra thing to put on for trying to fund your film. But Paninnguaq, would you like to start with how you funded your film?
I did it myself at first, actually. I work as a traditional practitioner of Gagionnerit, that is our tattoo. So I just work my ass off to pay the traveling expenses. But it was meant to be that I was meant to meet David that summer, because he lived in Australia, in Melbourne, for 4 years, and he worked at the festival, and he was given money to do a project, and he started the project in Greenland, but it kind of just didn't work out for him the way he wanted to. So when we started the project of White Paper, he with his manager, he started to work to put the money in our project instead. And so I started the funding myself because we were right in a time where the deadlines were over and we didn't have time to apply. So I paid all of it, and then they paid rest of it when the money was there. So that's how difficult it is. You have to you can't do what do you call it? You have to be well prepared to make films in Greenland. You can't just make impulsive project. It can be so expensive, especially because of the infrastructure here in Greenland. Everything is so far away from each other, and just by traveling, it costs so much to travel here in Greenland. So yeah, it wasn't easy, and that's why I'm so grateful that we got so much help in South Greenland. People sailed us from town to town, and to sheep farmers to sheep farmers. I mean, it wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't from help from local people.
Yeah,
That's so nice.
It is that very beautiful. I mean, I think that's part of what makes filming in rural Greenland, Inuit Greenland, so beautiful, because people, not just we as filmmakers, but a lot of people really want to tell stories, and I think there's a huge awareness of putting Greenland on the map culturally, basically. And I think, I mean, that's just a perfect example of you making probably the most important film of the year. I would call White Paper that. I really would, right? But you have to get funding from an indigenous film festival from Australia on the other side of the world. How crazy is that?
It's so crazy. That's why I'm saying it's meant to be Melbourne 4 years ago, and he lived there and then came back to Greenland the year that this is going on. So it can't be a coincidence.
Yes. And I think what's amazing about our culture is that even though we were colonized, even though we see Disney, we grew up in a Disney generation where, you know, animals talk and have like big cute eyes and stuff like that, we on the other side still had good night stories that were brutal and that were from our own culture. So I just feel like they're missing on the film scene. Like these stories are not there yet, but they have to be. And so I think that's very interesting about the scene from the Greenlandic scene in the future, how much also Mark is, your partner Paninnguaq, is also a part of bringing back both like awareness but also pride towards our own culture and our own stories. And I think that's definitely something that I hope to, but I also am sure will be a part of the future in the Greenlandic film scene.
Yes, beautiful. I couldn't agree more. I really, I mean, I'm sitting here just going like this, you know, my head bobs up and down. Yeah. Because I definitely feel you. I think what you're both saying is very important. And I know I too really dig back into my childhood stories. I was told the story of the Tugtupite, of how the woman gave birth on a mountain, and how this is a symbol of life. And I think that's what makes Greenland, maybe not just Greenlandic film or Greenlandic stories, but indigenous stories so beautiful, because they may seem brutal. Yes, I can definitely see that from a Western point of view, but I think that's part of the beauty, because I mean we do come from a harsh, brutal world, as you mentioned. So yeah, so I think that's very nice. We have to wrap up soon, but I'm really happy that we end on something looking ahead into the future and still looking back to our stories and our traditions of storytelling. So I really want to thank you both for taking part of this. It was so interesting to hear. I mean, both your process and a little bit about how we do this this filmmaking thing in Greenland. And before I give you a chance to say thank you, I really want to thank Native Spirit Film Festival and you guys watching when this comes out. And I need to thank also Filmmaking, the film workshop in Nuuk, and Film GL, which is the film community of Greenland. So Paninnguaq, thank you for taking your time to be part of this. I know you're a busy woman.
Yes.
And Aká, thank you for taking your time. And you're at a festival in Iceland. I mean, I hope you have fun.
I am having so much fun here in Reykjavik. I was supposed to go swimming today, but I would rather be here with you. So thank you so much also for making this opportunity to say something about these issues, because I think it's important that more people are aware how the structure is about funding, definitely, and we all are responsible to make a shift. And I see it already with reservation dogs now being something on Disney Plus. I mean, Indigenous people's stories are very much important in the future film business. So now we need to take the money shift. And that's going to be the ending of what I'm going to say. But thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, I would love to say thank you too. It really filled me up to speak to both of you. So,
yeah.
Thank you.